All right, guys, we got a little bit of a tricky one tonight. Let's show you what we got. All right, guys, so here's the deal. I wasn't going to record this one. Having a YouTube channel, you kind of have to be selective about which projects you put on YouTube. I don't have unlimited time to make a YouTube video every week on top of keeping projects running through the shop for the business. So I kind of have to be selective. So I wasn't going to do this one, but this one is going to be a challenge. It's a little tricky and it's something a little different than we've done before. So I'm going to show you what we got. All right, so we got a Dodge pickup here. Customer bought this to pull their camp trailer. Now, normally it wouldn't be an issue, but it's been lowered. And it doesn't look extremely low. They want to pull their fifth wheel with it. Now, to be able to pull the fifth wheel, when he puts the fifth wheel on it, it squats pretty bad. So he bought a set of airbags. So because it's been lowered, the clearance for the airbags is less than optimal. You can see I got one bracket sitting here. That's the bottom bracket for the airbags, and it's sitting on the axle. So right now there's about 2 7/8 here and 3 1/4 here, I believe. We need about 4 1/8 to be able to squish the airbags down to where they're all the way compressed to be able to slide it in there and bolt it in place. So I told the customer, as long as you understand that I don't know what it's going to do to your airbags, I can modify it to fit them in there. And he said, well, the whole reason I bought the truck was for this purpose, so go ahead and do it. So what we're going to do, here's my plan. And there was a couple options here, but this is what I've decided. This bracket right here, the frame is right here. So this bracket, it looks like it had airbags on it before. There's actually a plate right here by my thumb. When they lowered the truck, they must have taken them out because they didn't fit. So I'm going to cut this bracket off, and I'm either going to modify this bracket or leave this bracket off. I'm hoping that it works out to where I can tap 2 holes in the frame up under here, and then the top plate for the airbag will mount right to the frame. We'll get rid of this little bracket here, and we'll have enough clearance for the airbag. So I've got my Hypertherm set up with the gouging tip on it. I'm running it about 50 amps, and I'm going to scarf this off. There's a weld right here and one on the other side, and that's it. So it should be pretty quick and painless getting this bracket off. So once that bracket's off, I'll be able to clean it up with a grinder and then start looking at what our options are. If I have to cut this bracket down and mount the plate to that, that's still an option, but I don't want to have to do that. I think it would be better if we just leave this off and tap 2 holes in the frame and mount the top plate for the airbag straight to the frame. Here we go. When it's something delicate like this, I like to turn my amperage down on my plasma and just, if I have to take 3 or 4 passes and leave the base material alone, I'll do it. This is what I like to call one of those surgical jobs. So we've got to surgically remove this without gouging the frame, or at least that's the goal. So I've got it turned down to 50 and it's running good. Let's see how long it takes to get it off of there. All right, guys, we got that bracket out. There's not a whole lot of cleanup to do, but we'll just hit the high spots with a grinder, and then we'll be ready to start trying to fit our bracket and see what kind of modifications we got to do to that. Oh, there are times when I do wish I had a lift. For the record, this is one of them. I'm beginning to figure out I don't bend like I used to. This is our top bracket plate. These two bolt holes, there's a tapered head screw that goes in these two that holds the airbag in place, and then this is supposed to mount to the truck. It's too wide to fit between the bracket bolts for the gooseneck hitch, so we are going to have to cut this down. There's actually two threaded holes in the frame right here, and they do line up with this, so I'm wondering if I can't just put two bolts in there and cut this down. That's my thought. All right, guys, so I wanted to give you guys a quick update. I did get the passenger side done. Sometimes it's hard for me to film and try to figure out how I'm going to put things together at the same time. So sometimes I just have to shut the camera off, figure it out, and I can show you how I did it on the driver's side. So I still have to cut the upper bracket off on the frame, which you guys saw me do on the last one. So I'm going to hurry and do that now and then clean it up. So I'll get back to the same point that we were at on the other one, and then I'll show you guys how I figured out how to do this. All right, guys, just got back from going to the big city, had a couple basketball games had to go to. So we're going to see if we can't get this knocked out tonight. So that's all scarfed off and cleaned up. So now I want to show you what the bracket looks like. So these are the brackets that it comes with. This is the one that the airbag mounts to. And then this one is supposed to mount to this one. This one actually is supposed to mount to the frame, but for our application that doesn't work. So this doesn't even get used. And what I've done is I'll go ahead and lay this out so that you guys can see where I cut it and how I break it. Imagine the frame sits right here. So I line up the edge of the frame as close as I can to these holes. I'm using a silver pencil for this. It shows up better on this black plate. Take and mark that. And then the other important measurement is, because of the fifth wheel bracket plate that mounts on the side of the frame that's already there, this won't fit between that. It's too wide. So what I've done is I take and cut these corners out. So from here and here, and I make sure that the OD of this bracket is no more than 7.5 inches. So I'm actually marking 7, and then when I break it, this is 1/4 inch plate, so when I break it, it actually grows to a 7.5 OD, 1/4 inch on either end. So if we mark this out, all right. So then I'll go ahead, mark that. Mark that. Okay, so then this piece and this piece are my drops. So I'll cut those, and then I actually break these up. And I'll show you guys how that fits on the frame and why that's beneficial once I get it done, and I can show you what it looks like on the frame. It's going to be hard for me to explain up here, so we'll go ahead and get this cut. So I'm just using my little Swag Off-Road Portaban table, and then once I get that done, I break them up. So we'll go over the Portaban and cut these out. All right, guys, so I wanted to give you guys a quick update on our contamination issues with the TIG rod. I was able to figure out what the issue was. And as a matter of fact, it wasn't contamination at all. There was a few of you in the comments that actually mentioned exactly what the issue was. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you guys some pictures of how bad it got. And I will warn you, some of you may find these images disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I ran test pass after test pass after test pass, and I just could not get it to run right. I always had either these gray crustacean looking things, or you can see on every single one of these that gray sheen on the top, contamination looking stuff. I could not get that to go away. It didn't matter what I did. I knew something wasn't right. This is the test piece that I showed you guys in the previous video. It still has that sheen, that black contamination looking stuff on the surface. So does this side. Hopefully you guys can see that. So there was one thing left to try. I remember a long time ago at the shop I was working at the time, we actually ended up getting a bad bottle of argon. I've only experienced that once, and it was that one time, and it was a long time ago. I remember it was a similar situation to where we just couldn't get it to run right. I figured this was the last thing that I haven't tried yet. I swapped out the bottles, and I'll be danged if immediately it didn't start welding right. So, granted, this is not the most perfect weld, but it's leaps and bounds better than it was. You can see how shiny it is. It's a lot more uniform. Now, the biggest thing that I want to point out that I noticed that I knew it wasn't running right, and I think is a good indication that something's wrong with your gas. Obviously, one being that gray film on the top of the weld, but also number two, I noticed that it wasn't etching. So you weren't getting that etching ring around the outside of the bead where it's actually cleaning. And so basically, the gas wasn't allowing the arc to clean the metal, if that makes sense. If you look at this, there's hardly any etching on any one of these. Where I started, there was a little bit, but then as I got moving, the etching disappeared. There should be an etched line clear out here, and there's not on any one of these. You can see where I would start, there would be a little bit, and then by the time I ended, there was no etching. As soon as I put that new bottle in and ran a test pass, I want to show you the first one that I ran, right there. So I want you to notice how shiny it is, and look at the etching that follows the weld. Like I said, it's clear out here. So it was actually cleaning as I was welding. There's no film on the weld. That was it. It was a bad bottle of argon. I don't know if it had moisture in it. I don't know what the deal was, but took it back to the welding store, told them what happened. They did end up exchanging the bottle. So hopefully this helps somebody out. I just wanted to throw it out there. You spend so much time trying to figure out what's wrong, and you get so frustrated not knowing what the problem is. I think it's important once you figure it out to share that with others so that they don't have to go through the same rigmarole that you did. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. Hopefully that saves somebody out there a headache. Thank goodness. All right, guys, so I want to give you an update real quick. I've got it welded on, cleaned it up, painted it. So it's all ready to have the airbag and the bottom bracket mounted on. There are two little stitch welds I got to put on the bottom bracket. I got to stitch weld it onto the axle. But the problem is I don't have the bottom bracket. I think the mechanic shop that referred this guy to me, I think when they were trying to make this work, they forgot to put the bottom bracket for this side back in the box. So I'm going to clean up the shop, and so I'm going to have to get a hold of the mechanic shop on Monday and see if they've got the bracket. I would assume they do. I sure hope they do. And I'll go down and pick that up from them, and then we'll be able to get it wrapped up. Until then, there's nothing I can do. So I'm going to just clean up the shop and probably call it a night. So I'll catch up with you guys on Monday after I get the bottom bracket. So I wanted to finish this 2 days ago. I called the mechanic shop that referred this guy to me and asked them if they still had it. They said they don't have it. So I called the owner. I said, "Do you have the other bracket?" He checked his garage and he doesn't have it. So after talking to the customer, they basically had two options. They could either pay me to build a bracket, probably gonna take me 2 hours, or they could order one through Airlift. And he just decided he would rather just pay me to do it because he wants it done and he doesn't want to have to wait for shipping. Plus then his truck will be tied up down here. So it's probably just a better option for both of us. So that's what he decided to do. So this is where we're at. I got the new bracket all drafted up. This is actually the exact same design that Airlift uses. I pulled all the dimensions off of the other one. So we should be able to just break it and slap it right in. Or at least that's what I'm hoping. So that's where we're at. I'm gonna go ahead and get that cut now and we'll break it and then we should be able to start putting it together. I am gonna have to paint it. This is something that I've actually ran into before where I didn't have all the parts and gave the customer a choice. Do you want me to build one or do you want to order it and have to wait for it? 9 times out of 10, they just have you build one. So we'll go ahead and get this cut and we'll give you guys an update once we get to that point. All right, guys, so I got these cut. It's gonna be broke right in line with the edge of this. These get broke down. And then there's a U-bolt that ties around the top of the leaf springs. These two pieces here get broke on a 45. And then they weld to the bottom of this, and that sits on top of the axle. All of our holes should be good. I've checked them and they all line up great. So now I'm going to get this all cleaned up. I'm going to lay out my brake lines. I'm also going to brake these and then we'll set them on here, get them tacked on, check the fit, and we'll give you guys a look when we get to the point where we check the fit. All right, guys, we got our bracket all done. You can see I painted it, but it looks just like the factory one. There's a U-bolt that goes through here that pulls it tight up against the leaf springs. All right, so we're ready to throw this down there. So I'm gonna get it down there and I want to show you guys what the fit looks like. I'm actually pretty happy with how it turned out. So I'll crawl under there and give you guys a look. Ow! Ooh, piece of slag right under the kneecap. Ooh. So on the other side, we have the exhaust. This side, we got a wire harness, a brake cable, and a breather tube. So that's fun. So getting it in here could be a little tricky. Oh, hanging up on the brake line. You Dodge guys, is this how working on every Dodge is? Okay. Whew. So I got these two screws, these two tapered head screws. I'll put those in the top. That's what holds the top in place. Started. Both of them. Wouldn't that be something if this didn't line up? It'd be really something. But it does. Save me some money in the swear jar. Okay, she's good and tight. Well, all that's left now is put a couple tacks on this baby. Let's do it. Okay, let's try that again. Gregory was out here earlier. I think he was helping change the settings on the welder. Oh, oh, oh. Well, that just burnt the piss out of my arm. Thank goodness. U-bolt holds it on the front, and then there's the other side. So you can see how tight it is. It's definitely a tight one. We'll crawl out of here. I am going to put that fitting on for the mechanic. I'll hurry and put that fitting in, and then we'll give you one more look from the outside. All right, guys. See, it's a tight fit. I think the customer's going to be happy. For a minute there, he was thinking that maybe they were going to have to change the whole suspension back to factory, which you're talking a lot of money. I'm glad I could make it work for him. It was quite a task, but we did get it done. Well, I got that all put back together, got almost all the tools put away. And then I realized the top ring that sits on top of the airbag didn't get put on. So had to crawl back under there, pull the two top bolts. Luckily, I was able to squish the airbag down enough. I was able to slip it in there and then put the bolts back in. We did get it all put back together. I'll show you guys the ring I'm talking about, but story of my life. All right, so there's one of these rings on the bottom and one on the top. But I didn't have the one on the top before, so now I do. I just wanted to make sure that I showed you guys. Otherwise, somebody would have been like, hey. So that's going to wrap this one up. Appreciate you guys watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you on the next one. All right, so we'll go ahead and walk. Goodness. I just wanted to mention that because I think it's important if you're somebody that's thinking about starting this kind of business. If you're somebody that's thinking about starting something. So I'm going to have to get a hold of the customer. So after talking to the customer, they basically had two options. These two pieces here get broke on a 45.